Her father describes her as a force of nature. The NYPD is about to find out exactly what that means as Jessica Tisch takes over as the new commissioner. The Point starts right now. Jessica Tisch has already changed the lives of the men and women who work for the NYPD. She did it when she was a deputy commissioner. Now that she's the big boss, well, the sky's the limit. So you're taking over the department at a kind of a time of turmoil. You're the fourth person to hold the job. I wonder what your first priority is. What's the first thing you want to do?
You know, I think I was brought in to be a stabilizing force. I have worked in city government for 17 years, 12 of them at the NYPD, most of those as a deputy commissioner. I know how to run city agencies. I understand the police department. I like to say I know it like the back of my hand. And it is really just an honor and a privilege to be back as police commissioner.
What do you think your biggest challenges are going to be as you take on this job?
So, as you know, Marcia, arrests are up, crime is down. But the gnarly problem we have is really related to the revolving door of the criminal justice system. The mayor talks about it all the time. I was at a briefing yesterday, and I was told that 38 people were responsible for 1,162 crimes on the New York City subway system. That's 30 crimes per person. And each of those crimes has a victim. And the mayor has been very clear that our partners in the criminal justice system need to step up and work with us to shut this door down.
But I mean, it's a really hard problem. I mean, the mayor has tried to do it, but Albany seems to be reluctant to do the kinds of changes that you really do need.
Yeah, you know, as I see it, we don't have a crime problem in New York. We have a recidivism problem in New York. And part of what I'm going to do is make a very data-driven case about what that looks like and why it is and what I think we should do about it.
So, you know, every commissioner seems to be able to want to have their own people. Are you looking at bringing in some new blood or new people in the upper echelons of the NYPD?
You know, Marcia, I just came to your studio from a promotion ceremony where I was thrilled to promote my new chief of staff, who comes with me from the Department of Sanitation. I have worked for Mayor Adams for the past 3 years. I brought lots of new people into the Department of Sanitation, never had an issue bringing people in with me. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to shaping my leadership team at the NYPD.
You know, one thing that I was moved by at your swearing in is you brought 4 female chiefs back who had been in the department, and you praised them for breaking the glass ceiling.
They did.
And talked about wanting to bring more women up through the ranks. Tell me about that.
Yeah, those 4 chiefs were real role models for me as I was coming up through the ranks in the NYPD. They all wore the uniform, and they all ascended to the rank of 3-star chief. I think one of them was the first female to ascend to the rank of 3-star chief. And importantly, they all took a real interest in me and my career as a woman and a leader that they saw promise in. So I will always be grateful to them, and I look forward to doing the same thing for women leaders at the NYPD.
So what was it like for you? The year was 2008, and you decided to join the NYPD as an intelligence analyst. What was that like? So
I was straight out of law school and business school, and I didn't really want to do either the law firm jobs or the normal business jobs.
But the NYPD?
And so I quite randomly joined the NYPD. It wasn't something that I, had set my heart on. It was random. I joined as an intelligence analyst. I was an intelligence research specialist, level 2. And I'll say joining the NYPD has given me the most incredible, blessed career anyone could imagine. My career has really become one of the great joys in my life.
But the thing is that you did work your way up. You did become a deputy chief for information, and you made major changes.
We did.
In the NYPD. I mean, you took them from using typewriters to type their reports to the age of technology.
Yeah, I consider myself a modernizer. Every bureau or every agency that I lead, I want to leave better than how I found it. And that really started with the Information Technology Bureau at the NYPD, where you said it. When I showed up, they had typewriters in every precinct, and I left. Every cop had a body camera, smartphone, tablets in all the cars, domain awareness system, cameras, license plate readers, radiation sensors. Modernizing is what I do. I don't accept the status quo when the status quo is mediocrity. I enjoy busting the status quo when it needs to be busted.
So what's the next information leap that you plan on taking, or have you thought that out yet?
I have thought about it. You know, I left the department about 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And 4.5 years in technology age is like a generation. So now we have things like drones and AI, and these are new technologies that I think we really can leverage and invest in, not to replace cops, but as tools to help support cops. And importantly, you need to go into using these new technologies with guardrails and rules around how you responsibly use them.
Do you think that AI has a role in the NYPD?
I think it could have a major role in the NYPD, but we need to be smart about it. We need to get it right. We need to have guardrails and rules about how we use it responsibly.
Now, when people talk about the challenges of the NYPD, they talk about the fact that there's a morale problem and that there's a recruitment problem. How do you plan to tackle those?
So the mayor, when he called me to tell me that I was going to be the police commissioner, which was kind of surreal, he also called me to give me another great piece of news, which is that we were in our budget going to get 1,600 additional police officers. More cops work. When I worked for Commissioner Bratton in 2017, you would probably remember we brought 1,000 additional cops onto the force. 2018 and 2019 were two of the safest years since the 1950s in New York City. Look what just happened on the subway system. We flooded the zone in the subway system in October. Crime was down over 25% in the subways. So I think New Yorkers are going to see and feel a real difference from the mayor's investment in adding more officers to our force, and I also think it's going to help morale.
But so, you know, there's a situation where although crime is down, and you can cite all the statistics that show that most crimes are down, although not assaults and hate crime, do you think that more cops is the answer to making people feel safe?
Absolutely.
It's a perception of safety.
We have a problem in New York City with the perception of safety, absolutely, and we need to change that perception. And one of the best things you can do to change the perception is make people see cops more. They want to see them on the subways. We know that they're thrilled to see the extra cops on the subways. Now let's add more cops to the force, and they're going to see more cops out on the streets as well.
So if you get these 1,600 new cops, where are you going to put them?
They're going to hot spots and places where we have problems popping up. That's where they need to be deployed, where we're seeing the crime and the issues.
So one of the things that I was moved by at your swearing in was the fact that the chief of department of the sanitation department talked extensively about you and how they would meet somebody, the NYPD would meet somebody who would be a defender of everybody in the NYPD. And I wonder, do you think the fact that you are a civilian, you were a civilian employee, that that's going to be a problem in terms of winning over the police department?
I don't expect it to be. I've worked with and for police officers for 12 years and uniform agencies for about 15 years. It's never been an issue for me. I don't expect it to be here.
So also at your swearing in, you talked about how you want to make people so proud of being police officers that they would want their sons, their grandsons, et cetera, to follow them in the force.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I find very difficult over the past few years. A number of people I worked with at the NYPD, their mother or their father was a police officer, their grandfather was a police officer, and they don't want their kids to become police officers. We need to turn that around. Policing is the noblest of professions, and no one does it better than the New York City Police Department.
How do you turn it around?
I think adding the additional cops is going to help a lot, but I also think going really on the offensive on these things that make cops' jobs frustrating. How frustrated would you be if you arrested someone for a crime and then you saw that they were let out the next day and you were arresting them again the next day for the same thing? It's tedious.
So the revolving door is something you're going to vow to change?
I'm going to vow to give it my best shot, to make a very data-driven, effective case about where we see gaps and how I think that we should close them. And again, my background as a civilian, I've worked across the aisle in the city council, in Albany. I'm looking forward to doing the same thing now as police commissioner.
And I think the people in Albany are going to have a lot to deal with when you get there. We're going to have to leave it right there for now. But we're back with a firebrand assemblyman who wants to be mayor. Zohran Mamdani is the Queens Assemblyman who wants to take on the challenge of running New York City. So I have to ask you,
please,
you've jumped into the race. What do you think that you bring to the table that other people who've said they want to run don't?
I think I bring a vision and a set of policies that recognizes the scale of the crisis we're living through. This is the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but it's becoming unlivable for the working class who built it. More than 50% of New Yorkers are handing over a majority of their paycheck each month to a landlord or a bank for housing.
But how can you fix that?
You know, one way is that about 2.5 million New Yorkers live in rent-stabilized units.
Right.
Those are units that their rent is set by the mayor. And what this mayor has done is use that power to raise their rents by 9% and counting.
What would you do if you were mayor?
I would freeze the rent every single year that I was the mayor. New Yorkers deserve relief. And now.
But what about landlords who are going to say, you know, our costs are going up, fuel is going up, the employee salaries are going up? What about them?
What I would say to them is there are city programs, we've seen them, where landlords can apply for relief if their costs are not matching up with what they are getting from their rent. Those are places we can address those issues. But to say that we have to put those costs on the back of tenants, a median income of which is about $60,000, many of whom are fixed income seniors, it doesn't allow for people to stay.
But how does that look when you say to landlords you have to apply for relief from the city? And how is the city going to afford something like that?
You know, I think that the city can afford it because I actually don't think there are as many landlords as are claimed that are facing this mismatch between their expenses and their income. Also in Albany, we have created, against my will, more loopholes for landlords to actually raise the rent through means of individual apartment improvements where they can charge tenants for improvements they do to the units. So what we're actually seeing is, I think by and large, landlords across New York City are doing all right. It's the tenants that I'm very worried about. So
is that the only thing that would be your priority? Would that be your calling card for what your campaign would be about?
No, our calling card is going to be how we can make life more affordable for working class New Yorkers across the board. So what we opened with was freezing the rent for rent-stabilized tenant, making buses free for the million New Yorkers who ride them every day, and making them fast because they're currently the slowest buses in America, and making universal child care a reality for New York families.
So let's talk about making buses fast. How in the world, with the traffic, even with congestion pricing, are you going to make buses faster?
So there are a couple of ways. One thing is that the city has tools it's not currently using, like preferential signaling for a bus that can hold a green light for longer when a bus is actually moving through. Right now, we're not using that technology.
Yeah, but that adds to congestion.
Not if you actually have the majority of people on that bus, because what we've seen is so many New Yorkers are riding it. It's 8 miles an hour across the average, but in Manhattan, in the Central Business District, 5 miles an hour. The other thing is that when you make a bus free, you can enable all-door boarding. And if you've taken a bus, you know you've stood at the front of the line when an auntie is reaching into her purse and looking for the Metro card. You don't have to have that anymore.
But how much is that going to cost the MTA, which has miles and miles and miles of monetary problems?
I think that an estimate looks like around $700 to $800 million a year, and that may sound like a significant amount of money, which it is, but between a $350 billion budget across both New York City level and New York State level, it's a question of priorities. Do we believe that working class New Yorkers, 1 in 5 of whom can't afford public transit any longer, do we believe they deserve liberty?
But see, here's then the question. Do you then have to raise the fares for everybody else so that the MTA can actually afford to do that?
No, I do not think you can raise the fare on working class New Yorkers. I think that this constant fare raising is something that we should in fact be getting this money from elsewhere. One other point I'll make. When you make the bus free, it's not just economic benefits, it's also public safety benefits. We won a free bus pilot where we made 1 bus route in each borough free. We saw a drop in assaults on bus drivers by 38.9%, an increase in ridership by 30%, and we saw that of the new riders, 11% had previously been driving a car or taking a cab. Now there was less congestion because they were getting on the bus.
But, you know, there's a part of me that wonders whether the people who run against you in the mayor's race are going to accept, you know, somebody that's that far to the left, or they're going to be more middle of the road, and which path do you think that New Yorkers are going to follow in terms of picking somebody to replace the current mayor?
I think New Yorkers are tired of the ideological branding, frankly. I mean, look, I am somebody who's running an unabashedly progressive campaign. There's no doubt about it. And at the same time, I went and spoke to voters who voted for Trump on Fordham Road and on Hillside Avenue, places that we saw the biggest swings towards Trump. And what they told me, the number one concern for them was cost of living.
And that was why they voted for Trump?
That's what they said, that they wanted change, they wanted someone addressing the cost of living crisis, and they wanted peace in a time of war. Now, we know Trump is insincere about many of those things, if not all of them. But frankly, we need to hear voters as to what they're feeling and provide them with an answer to it.
So I wonder what information, what lessons you take from the fact that President Trump did very well in New York for a Republican. He got 43% of the vote in what's basically been a blue state. So was that a repudiation of liberal policies because he was very, very conservative?
No, I actually think it was a repudiation of the Democratic Party's abandoning of working-class voters, as opposed to liberal policies at large. I think it was a repudiation of an attempt to speak about values and emotion as opposed to the economy. You know, when we listen to New Yorkers, they tell us they can't afford their basic day-to-day life. They don't care about democracy or fascism. They care of whether or not they can go to the grocery store and actually buy the milk and the eggs that they need.
So who's going to pay for all of this?
I think that we can find the money, one, through a better use of funds than what Eric Adams has been doing while he's been the mayor, and two, by raising taxes on the wealthiest corporations that we have doing business across New York State.
And the wealthiest corporations would be who?
You know, I mean, we think about who does business across New York State. Those corporations include businesses like Google, like Apple, like Microsoft. We can look at that list. And the beauty of New York State tax law is you need not be headquartered in New York State to be eligible for taxes. It's just that your business has to operate.
I guess the thing that worries me in terms of people who talk about taxes is the problem of outmigration. And New York has lost thousands and thousands and thousands of people to people leaving the state because of high taxes. And corporations have left because of high taxes. And the projections are that by the next census, when we would have to decide how many seats we get, we're going to lose another seat because over 2 million people are going to also leave New York. So aren't you afraid that that heavy and new tax policy will add to the outmigration problems?
So I agree with you in that outmigration is a critically important issue. I disagree on the reasons for why it's occurring. I think in studies that I've seen, it's working class New Yorkers who are disproportionately leaving at higher numbers because they can't afford life here. And after housing, the number one cost is childcare, because we have an annual cost of $20,000 to $25,000 a year if you want to put your kid into childcare. What we've seen in other places like Quebec, when they instituted universal childcare, they saw a 10-to-1 return on their investment. So I think that we have to address outmigration. The way that I think we can actually do it is by investing in working class people and keeping them here.
So let's talk about Eric Adams. Do you think Eric Adams has a path to running again?
I think he will run again, whether or not there's a path.
Seriously?
I do.
And will voters vote for him?
I think some will vote for him, but I don't think that much of his base will. Because, you know, when he ran with promises to working class New Yorkers.
But he also ran to make the streets safer, and he can brag about the fact that most crimes, other than assault and hate crimes, are down.
Well, I think the issue is that he was talking about crime even when these statistics were not backing it up in that time either. And it was about the emotion of crime, the emotion of feeling unsafe. And for many New Yorkers, that emotion still continues. And I think we have to address it by being serious about it, as opposed to what his approach has largely been, which is that of impunity, whether it be for his police department or his own actions or those of his close associates.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but there's more after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. The turkey's been carved. Some of us may still have some leftovers in the fridge, but it's still a time of Thanksgiving. I'm grateful for all the talented people here on The Point who make me a better version of myself. Now, what are New Yorkers thankful for? Well, they're weighing in on your point. Name 3 things you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for the simple things, especially today.
Waking up this morning.
God, my family, and health.
My health, my family, and my country.
Family, life,
friends.
Grateful Thanksgiving is coming.
My family and my opportunity here in New York.
I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the city that I live in and all the beautiful architecture.
The fact that I have the ability to go and work out right now, which is what I'm about to go do, so my health. And my cat.
My health, my husband, and my family.
Grateful that in spite of everything, I think we have a solid government underneath us.
My family, my friends, and still some hope in America.
So why are you grateful for the things you're grateful for?
Because there's so much in this life that we take for granted.
Without those, I wouldn't be here.
Because they give me blessings every day.
It's a really scary time right now. I know a lot of people with college degrees that have faced homelessness.
I think it's just an absolute blessing to be living in this country. I think in spite of everything.
I sustained a lot of injuries in the past, so the fact that I can be up and move my body up substantially. I just came from ballet class. Now I'm going to go work out. I'm extra grateful for.
How do you think being grateful or showing gratitude, does it make you happier?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It does, yes.
It's exquisite. It brings me the most joy.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, for sure.
I hear that there's science behind it, but I would imagine that it helps focus on the positive.
It makes me a better person.
Because
Without those things in life, I wouldn't be the man who I am today.
Helps you be more aware.
Feel good about helping somebody, even though you're doing it for them, you're doing it for yourself too.
When I take the time to tell others how much I appreciate them, it helps me feel that love and appreciation for them a little bit more.
Because instead of keeping it inside just for myself, I get to express it, and then someone else might feel it as well. You know, it's contagious.
Absolutely. I think the more we show gratitude, the happier we'll be in life. I'm grateful for this interview. I'm grateful for you guys.
And I'm grateful for you.